Welcome into episode 226. Be sure you're following us on Twitter at BaileyJAdams22, at by Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. You can also email us at PegasusPodcast by ksn@gmail.com. Where do we start?
I don't know. I really don't know.
UCF won 35-34.
They did.
They trailed 28-7 early in the third quarter. They trailed 31-13 with 5:03 left in the third quarter, and they won the game. They pretty much pulled a reverse Baylor from last year.
Yeah.
And
if you're really quickly, if you're watching or hearing me chug water, it's because we had to walk like 2 miles from TCU's campus to find an Uber, and it took a while to get back, which is why we're just now doing this podcast. And I was deeply dehydrated, so we're working on keeping my body alive here. But they reverse Baylor. They reverse Baylor.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of college football is where there can be a game where Bailey and I are in the concourse at halftime discussing how it's clear that the Gus Malzahn experiment has failed and that UCF, I said the words to you, I said, I fear that UCF is just going to always be a perennial 6-6 team in this conference and will never, ever get to the top of the league. And then UCF won the game that we were discussing.
Still could be the case.
I'm sorry. I know I said you, listen, we said on the pod before this one that obviously problems would arise once they played a real team, and boy, did they. But I this is the type of win that I actually do feel like changes what you can expect going forward, because it just, now UCF knows they can win anything. They're not going to, believe me. But it's just, there were so many things that went right in the second half for them to organize that comeback. I think chief among them being the offensive triple threat of KJ Jefferson, RJ Harvey, and Kobe Hudson, who all in their own ways were just undeniable in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know. Can we even start in the second half before we talk about how we got there?
Man, I don't even want to talk about the first half, but I guess we probably
should. Dire in the first half. They come out and they
horrible.
Go 3-and-out. KJ misses Kobe on a deep ball. He's wide open down the middle of the field. They go 3-and-out, then pretty bad punt, and then TCU goes 56 yards like nothing.
Yeah. Just like a knife through butter. It was every worst nightmare we'd had for all three phases of the game coming true, just for a full half of football. I mean, I said on our preview podcast, I said that I don't know what we're going to see from the defense, but I know they're not going to be straight up awful. They were straight up awful for about 3/4 of that game. I mean, the way TCU just picked them apart over and over and over on these really just basic slants and minor throws, just mid-range stuff.
Basic form of offense you could do, at least in terms of throwing the ball, and it worked all night, and I don't blame them for doing it. I mean, they threw the ball 52 times. They didn't even try to run the ball, and I don't blame them.
It's not often to see a quarterback throw the ball 52 times in a game where they're winning for most of the game.
And he goes 35 of 52 for 402 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and they lost the game.
And oh, good Lord. And to the defense's credit, TCU really couldn't run the ball. They tried a few times, could not get it going at all. Unfortunately, they just were actually getting whatever they want through the air. And D-line wasn't getting pressure. Secondary was just allowing everything. Those are all problems. And they're particularly problems since the next team UCF faces has Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter. So, like, a concern to be sure. But I don't know what changed on those last couple drives where the defense just locked in. I can tell you that my defensive MVP is Deshaun Pace.
Yep.
He was everywhere.
Best player on the defense.
Absolutely everywhere. Just all flying around, getting in guys' faces, making plays. I mean, he was really, really incredible. And he saved the game a couple of times for them in the second half. As far as the defense is concerned, Deshaun Pace is my MVP by a mile.
Yeah. So they go down 21-7. Well, okay. They go down 21-7. UCF has the ball. They get inside the 10 with probably like a minute left in the first half. And it was the most mismanaged minute I've seen in a while. It was really bad. Then they throw a fade on third down that had no chance. Actually came closer to being a catch than I thought it had any right to be. And then they go out for a field goal, and Colton Boomer has his second kick blocked of the half. He would later have a third kick blocked. It was an extra point when UCF cut it to 28-13. So anyway, mess up the end of the first half. They're down 21-7. TCU's getting the ball to start the second half, and I'm thinking it's over. And I would like to leave the stadium. I want to go home. I have a flight at 7:05 tomorrow morning. I just would like to get back to the hotel.
We're recording this at 12:42 a.m.
No, 11:42.
11:42. I apologize. We are in Central Time, and I'm still in it. We are recording this at 11:42 a.m. Central Time, and Bailey's Uber is picking him up 4 a.m. So we are
4:20.
Don't ever say that we are not doing all we can for this podcast, because we're actually going to deprive Bailey of sleep and then send him to another state and see what happens tomorrow. So.
Yeah, it'll be great. But I just wanted to leave, and then TCU does come out and scores immediately. 50-yard touchdown pass to the same receiver who was wide open constantly. He went up for over 200 yards. So they went up 28-7. And then it just felt over. It felt like that was
It
done.
didn't. Let me be clear. It did not feel over. The game was over. There was not a soul in the United States of America who saw what would happen, saw the score, and thought this is a game where that might still have some twists and turns. The game was just over.
Even late into the third quarter. I mean, they score, they get the extra point blocked. It's 31-13. Then or it's 28-13. Then they give up a field goal drive, which is like you're like, okay, wow, held them to a field goal.
Yeah.
And then with 4:01 left, they just blazed down the field. All of a sudden, KJ was connecting with Kobe, connected with him deep down the field, and then again, Kobe ran away from the defense for a touchdown. Made it 31-20, and even then I wasn't like,
I was just like, I remember having the conscious thought at that point of, okay, well, at least like we're gonna keep the score in a way. I actually was kind of mad because I was like, this is gonna undercut our ability to talk about how horrible this game was, because I said to you, I'm sick of celebrating like coming back to make scores look okay. Like I said that to you because I was so upset. But then they just kept coming back after that.
And then the turning point, I honestly don't even know what happened. I have to see it maybe on the replay, but UCF got called for a delay of game, right? And Gus was screaming. RJ was pissed. He was like jumping. Like I was the most mad I've ever seen.
I don't know how much if that was caught on the broadcast because, like I said, we're in the stadium, so I'll have to go see. But we're watching RJ, and they get called for that. He's like stamping his foot and yelling, and he would not calm down for that whole.
I don't know if they thought that TCU jumped, but I don't know what happened. But anyway, after that, he got the ball in the next. He got the ball in the next carry and just ran right through the defense I believe for a first down. And he ended up finishing that drive with a 27-yard touchdown run. He gets a 2-point conversion where it was a little pitch play, which I don't think I've seen them run yet this season.
It was almost like, I think it was almost like a shovel pass.
Yeah, it was. It was. And so RJ gets in. It's 31-28 all of a sudden with a whole quarter to go.
And that's when you and me were looking at each other like, what the hell?
You turned to me and said, how is it 31-28? And I had already typed out on my phone, how is it 31-28? It was, and so that happens, but we're thinking, okay, TCU's getting the ball back.
I did not feel confident.
They've been driving down the field all day.
By the way, we have to set the scene. We're in this stadium that TCU has sold out.
Yep.
And is packed with TCU fans. And they all, it was the worst thing because the mood, and I don't blame them, but the mood that those fans, every fan we came across had settled in on by the late third quarter was smug satisfaction. Like, it's just a party. They walk by us, they give us sad smiles like, I can't believe you came all the way to watch your team die. It was just there. It was not a good stadium environment to be stuck in as your team is just suddenly weirdly coming back.
Yeah.
TCU fans never seemed worried.
No,
it seemed like they never grasped.
A bunch of them left at halftime.
Yeah.
And then more in the third quarter. And I was thinking, like, this is what UCF fans did last year against Baylor. And then so TCU does go down the field and get another field goal, but you're still thinking, okay, it's a 6-point game. And UCF can go down and score. Maybe they make the extra point this time and they're leading.
Which is suddenly in question since they got one block.
So they didn't do that. Instead, they faced a 4th and 5 right around midfield, about 5 minutes left, and they punted the ball. And I said, that's hilarious. Like that they're not getting the ball back because that's it. I hope you've all said your goodbyes because we're never seeing the ball again. And
I mean, we were actually losing it.
Yeah, and I still think it was the wrong choice because there was no guarantee the defense was going to go out there and force a 3 and out.
And I get a 4th and 5 in your own territory is crazy if you're one of the people saying, why would you? But you have to understand, at that point in the game, the defense had actually seriously at no point stopped TCU. There had been one drive.
I think 2. They had one in the first half, one in the second half.
I mean, the whole game, it was TCU just getting whatever they want. So I was fully of the belief if they punted, they were never, ever going to see that.
Yeah, and then they went 3 and out in about, I don't know, it was like 30 seconds maybe. It was a quick 3 and out. And then UCF gets the ball back and start driving down the field a little bit, ran the ball a little bit. KJ hit a throw or 2, found Randy Pittman for 1, then found Randy Pittman for another one, where at the end of the play, it looked like he fumbled, and that led to the most scary, I don't know how long was it, like 3 or 4 minutes probably, where they reviewed that which
fumble was
the longest review.
If that was scary for you guys at home, imagine being in the stadium where you have no idea what it looked like.
We couldn't see anything.
Oh man, I actually, like, my heart was pounding out of my chest for that.
So then no fumble, drive continues, and shortly after that, KJ throws a beauty of a ball to Kobe Hudson, who takes a very hard shot right at the goal line and holds on to it. 20-yard touchdown, 34-34.
Yeah.
Then it was scary because here comes the extra point. They've got to do it. And Colton Boomer made it.
He did indeed.
But then there was still 36 seconds left. TCU had 2 timeouts. The defense had been allowing these little 8-10-yard chunks all night. And you're thinking, okay, well, they're going to get down the field pretty easily, probably. And they might have a shot to kick a field goal. And luckily, I honestly think part of it was sheer luck. Because the last play they ran before their field goal attempt, the ball was in the guy's hand and it would have made it a much easier field goal.
Yeah.
And he dropped it. They could go for a 58-yarder and it goes wide right.
You don't tie your greatest comeback in program history without some dumb luck
on
your
absolutely.
side. There were so many moments. They could have overruled the fumble. They could have TCU could have not dropped that ball. TCU. I gotta say, we were on. I didn't notice this at all in the stadium. You go on Twitter and there's all the videos of all the TCU fans thought he made the 58-yard kick. They all start celebrating. And you see the realization on their faces that they all, which I don't understand because from our angle, which to be fair was head on, it wasn't close at all.
No.
Like, it was not. We were celebrating before it even.
But if you are, right. I've noticed this in any stadium. If you're watching it from the sideline, you have no idea. And I don't know. I never even really react when field goals are kicked because I can't see. But
I think some of my biggest takeaways from this game, as far as we'll do positive because the offense was positive, is one, RJ Harvey is the best running back in the Big 12. I don't understand how he might be the best running back in the country. I mean, he's incredible. And I mean, tonight, 29 carries for 180 yards, 2 touchdowns, 29 reception for 29 yards and a touchdown there. I mean, over 200 all-purpose yards, 3 touchdowns. Ollie Gordon had another garbage day as Oklahoma State was killing Tulsa. I just don't know how. And it seems like the Big 12 account finally realized it tonight and was like heavily tweeting RJ Harvey, which that's the other backdrop for this too, is this was the first Big 12 conference game of the season.
UCF's at the top of the conference.
UCF is number 1 in the Big 12. Enjoy it while it lasts. And it was so funny after the game because my phone was not working or in the stadium to see all the reactions of national people and Brett McMurphy and all them being like, wow, the Big 12 is not disappointing on this thing about how they're going to have these fun, crazy games when you have UCF get murdered for basically 2.5 quarters and then win the game. But anyway, my big takeaways for offense are RJ Harvey, UCF legend, second best running back in program history. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The bigger one to me is it feels like, I don't know, something about that fourth quarter. It was like KJ just realized, like, I don't know. It's like he is the last player. Literally, he is the last player from what we saw through the first 2 games that I would expect to be clutch. But it was like they're in there, the game's on the line. It was suddenly, this 5th-year senior who's quarterbacked in the SEC for years out there who is just making the right plays over and over and over again.
There's something to be said too about being in that atmosphere, and probably that didn't even faze him because he's been in crazier atmospheres than that and been in tougher spots, and he was able to get him down the field. I mean, Randy Pittman had those 2 big catches, but Kobe Hudson, I mean, for that drive for the game-winning touchdown for the entire game, he had 6 catches for 145 yards and 2 touchdowns. The UCF does not have, I don't think, even a wide receiver 2 at this point.
It sucks, but Townsend's just not emerging. He's just not. I don't
know if they're not giving him a lot of chances to, at least as a receiver. They're doing a lot of the end-around stuff.
Townsend tonight, 2 catches for -2 yards, 4 carries for 19 yards was Townsend's
night. And he didn't even really get to do anything on kick returns.
I'm kind of done waiting for him to emerge, but I mean, it's like I never imagined through those first, especially not the night of the New Hampshire game or the week after that, we'd ever see a KJ to Kobe connection. And we saw it tonight.
Yeah.
They won with that connection.
Well, I said it, I think, was it after New Hampshire? I was like, poor Kobe. He's like trying to get to the NFL and he just can't, he doesn't have a quarterback who can get him the ball. Maybe that's not the case. Maybe in this game and some of the highlights from the tape from tonight, he'll be able to put out there for the NFL. That
incredible catch to score the touchdown that eventually won the game. And he also it was a penalty. He takes this horrific hit.
They reviewed it and said no, but
holds onto the ball like it's nothing.
I don't know. I don't know how they did it. I'm not going to say all things are great because they were down 28-7 at a certain point, 35-13.
It feels weirdly bad to talk about the problems tonight.
We'll talk about them on the next podcast, I think, because I have some things to say.
I mean, listen, we'll get into it a little bit, but I think that you want to know what the alarm bell is going to be, which I have to backing up really quickly, guys. It's almost 1 a.m. I don't know what's going on. One thing that we definitely, it's not, sorry, it's 11:52. I have to say, for the record, I never switched to Central Time. We've been here 3 days. I'm still like waking up at the wrong times. I'm eating at the wrong times. It was like 10:30 a.m. today, and I was like, I need lunch now. But we definitely fell into the trap of through 2 games, we were way too. We should have talked more about the fact that those were 2 very lesser opponents. And
I think we did that, though.
We did that. No, we absolutely did that. At no point were we like, they beat Sam Houston, so we feel great. But we were falling into the trap too much of being like, things seem pretty perfect everywhere but KJ. And they're not. I think the biggest one is the defense clearly has problems. And look, maybe the end of the season rolls around. It turns out TCU has one of the more deadly offenses in the Big 12, and this is just what they do to people.
Yeah.
But the defense looked lost for a lot of the game. And they won, and that's amazing. And I do think that they're going to build a lot off of this win. I think that changes what you can do as a team when you know you can win in situations like this, when you have that confidence, when you're going to stay calm when you face adversity because you know you can handle it. But there are a lot of good offenses they still have to face between now and the end of the season. And I'm just like, I look back what the defense did tonight. And I'm like, how are they going to deal with like Noah Fafita and T-Mac when Arizona comes to town? How are they going to deal with Cam Rising? I mean, there are just games on the schedule that I'm just like, how do they deal with those teams? And guess what? One of them is literally the next game they play.
Yeah.
So there's concerns for the defense that weren't there before.
I give them credit for stepping up in the second half the way they did, at least especially in the fourth quarter, limiting the field goal drives and then getting a stop, down when to get UCF the ball back, which I did not think that was a given whatsoever.
Right.
But the first half was abysmal, and early in the third quarter, abysmal. Like I was thinking, I even tweeted, I was like, Ted Roof is stealing money because this defense looks the same as it did last year. Maybe they're not getting beat in the same ways. They're not just getting the ball run all over them, but they were giving up chunk play after chunk play. They had no resistance, no pass rush. They weren't getting their hands on any footballs in the passing game. Like it was bad. And I was thinking these are supposedly like these are better players. They went out and got these high caliber transfers, and the defense, as far as production, as far as just showing resistance did not look any better than it did last year. And I just couldn't believe they were at that point because, you go through the whole thing where you're demoting Addison Williams and you're bringing in a new defensive coordinator and Ted Roof and doing all this stuff. I'm like, this is the same team we've seen last year, year before that. Like it did not look any different. Second half was a completely different story. So,
and listen, you guys felt this way too. I saw Twitter through Bailey's phone. He would show me everyone was in shambles, and I get it because Ted Roof we hated that hire when that happened. Yep. I'm still not sold.
I still don't like it
after that game. And it just felt like it's exactly what you just said. There was so much early in that game where I'm sitting here and I'm like, how are we here again? This looks exactly like how are they not any more competitive? And honestly, it's so funny that I'm sitting there thinking that. And then we see the difference in the second half because the difference is last year's UCF is the team that at home takes a huge lead and then slacks off and blows it and can't come back and can't complete that final drive. And this year's UCF team is a team that goes down huge on the road against a very good team in a sold-out stadium on Family Weekend and never stops trying to win. I even had the thought at one point, it was when they were down 31-13. I'm watching Gus on the sideline yelling at someone and grabbing his play sheet. And I literally had the conscious thought of like, what are you doing, man? Like the game's over. Like, but that's the difference is a team never giving up and RJ Harvey getting pissed and KJ getting pissed and all of them just Deshaun Pace going crazy.
Kobe Hudson plays pissed 100% of the time, but I think it was on another.
It was a different level. It seriously was like their anger led them to that win. It seemed like they were just so fed up with the situation that the whole team collectively was like, let's just stop doing this. This sucks. Let's just win the game. But
and this is where we talked about this on the preview show was they were either going to win this game in whatever fashion they won it or lost it. We were thinking, okay, well, then they have to sit with it for the next week because there's a bye week and then there's Colorado. At least now you go into the bye week 3-0. You have plenty of stuff you need to fix, but you have the bye week to fix that. And you at least feel okay. Like, all right, 3-0, 1-0 in the Big 12. We've got this stuff to work on, but we can build on this rather than everything sucks. We went down 28-7 and lost 42-20, whatever it was. And it's just so to win this game and be able to still take some stuff away from it and hopefully fix it. That's where I kind of say like, all right, second half looked better, fourth quarter looked better for the defense. If Ted Roof can get in there and do whatever he does and, get some things fixed in the pass defense before Colorado, I'll start to feel a little bit better. But what we saw tonight was if they do that on a weekly basis, they're not going to win that many more games because this is not a game that they should feel like, oh yeah, we just dominated and we came out. This was a game they should not have won, but they did.
But we did learn positive things. Like I will say, the biggest positive thing we learned is I'm good with KJ now. That second half performance, and honestly, it's like even at the beginning, he had a couple throws he missed. He wasn't a disaster at any point, but it just felt like. Sorry, my voice is. I was yelling at the game. Obviously, we talked about this before. I do one game as a fan a year, and it's a road game, so I never know what the hell's going on or how to like moderate myself, but. It just felt like KJ hit another gear, and I feel like we can trust him now in these situations. But you're right. I mean, I didn't watch that game and come away and say to myself, "Wow, that's great. UCF is going to go undefeated now. They're going to lose games this year." But honestly, we used to think so big picture in the group of five, right? Because it was like in the group of five, you drop one game and your season's over. Because it's just about getting your sixth bowl. And let's be real, this 16-team Big 12 is just survive the freaking week. Yep. I mean, that's the thing. So it's just. I mean, it's like Josh Heupel's just go 1-0 has never been more accurate than in this conference this year because you're right. There are things to talk about, and boy, will we in the next 2 weeks. But it's also just they survived the first one. They got their 1-0 in Big 12 play, and it's just all right. Now try to survive Colorado and just survive as many as you can. And I think UCF has a shot to be in the mix for the Big 12 title still. I do think that. I think that I could be wrong, but now that I've seen them in 3 games, I do feel like there's a chance that TCU is one of the better teams in this conference, and this might be a win that ages really well. I don't think this is a situation where TCU's 4-8 and we're like, wow, how did they ever struggle with them? But there's tough roads ahead, no doubt. But I don't know. It's hard to watch your team come back from down 28-7, down 31-13, and not just feel kind of optimistic, even though they were in fact down by that, which isn't great.
Yeah, I mean, we feel a lot different if that field goal goes through and they lose 37-35. Like the fact they came back, cool, but they still lost the game and they shouldn't have been in that situation anyway. But no, they missed the field goal. UCF wins, and we can come out here and say some positive things and be happy. And yeah, we can get into some of the negatives probably more on the next podcast. But
this was a night of jubilation and happiness.
I don't want to be the guy that comes on here and is like, well, did you see what happened in the second quarter of this game that UCF came back and won? Because I mean, you all did see what happened, and it wasn't good.
Yeah,
but
we've barely even touched. We've only briefly mentioned the whole like 3 kicks being blocked over the course of the game, which is a huge problem. But they survived. And honestly, it was just a really cool game to be at. I have to say really quickly while we're on this topic, a couple things for the listeners not been around here. I learned that Fort Worth and Dallas are not the same city. Now I knew they were different cities, but I thought they were like right next to each other. They're not. Dallas, very far away. TCU Stadium is one of the nicer, maybe the nicest college football stadium I've ever been in.
Very
that
nice.
oil money is hitting. Their campus is very nice. I mean, I'm serious. I was blown away. Like I said to you, I actually feel horrible. I don't even want to say on the podcast, but I said to you, because we went a couple days ago and just walked around the stadium. I said to you, I'm like, I feel like I'm embarrassed of the bounce house. Like I don't want TCU fans to come to Orlando and see the bounce house because there's that freaking nice.
I had a TCU fan reply like, "Oh, hopefully we can see y'all stadium one day." And I was like, "Oh, it's not much to see. The atmosphere is great, but like the stadium itself, you're not going to walk through it and be like, wow,
no."
What a palace. This was like a palace.
TCU Stadium is built like a castle. And this is a fairly recent development. This has been, they have a lot of money and they when they got to the Big 12, they worked their way up very quickly. But I mean, it's a very historic feeling stadium. And they had a good atmosphere. It was it was a loud crowd. They did exactly what UCF did for Baylor. I was surprised how many people left at halftime.
Me too.
It was 21-7 at halftime, and people were streaming out. Which,
and I said to you, I was like, these people, I was like, we know this game's over, but I was like, the TCU fans don't know it's over. Why are they all leaving? And I guess it wasn't over. Right? We didn't even know that it was. So
I came very close to suggesting we leave. I was very close.
Remember what I told you?
What?
I was like, I said, if this game was in Orlando, I'd want to leave. Right. But I said, we came all the way here. And if they somehow come back, so if they somehow come back and we're not here for it, I'm going to be mad for the rest of my life.
I completely forgot you said that. And I remember at the time being like, okay, Bailey. And then they did. I mean, it just crazy. I mean, I'm trying to think of all the UCF games I've been in attendance for. Like obviously the game was enjoyable, hated it every second, but the moment, like the joy I felt at the end of that game, been a while since I felt that kind of joy about a UCF game. I mean, it has honestly been a while. It was just such a rush and a thrill for them to actually pull that one out. And to really, I mean, like I said, we're still in our infancy here in the Big 12. I mean, this is their second ever win over a legacy Big 12 team. Oklahoma State was the only one last year. So this year, when they're down by a bunch, I'm just like, okay, they can't compete with real Power 5 teams. We were saying, they'll beat Cincinnati, they'll beat BYU, and you just hope for something else. Like we were down bad, guys.
It was
I'm
bad.
sure you were too. And
we couldn't do a halftime podcast. We could have done that. That would have been fun.
Oh, the halftime podcast would have been, it would have been something else. Yeah. But they did it. They took a team that was in the national championship game 2 years ago that I think is a very solid squad this year, and they came back from a huge deficit on the road and beat them. And that takes grit, and that's not something this team was doing last year. I can tell you that.
Yeah, no, it absolutely wasn't. I don't know. What is there anything else?
Yes, the uniforms.
Right, there you go.
I'm so I said to you at one point. So sorry, I'm tired. I'm so sorry, guys. You have to look at this through the lens of it being midnight. I'm doing what I can. We also had to walk. I already said that. I'm sorry, guys. I'm exhausted. Not good podcasting happening right now, but I always get so upset when they lose games in cool uniforms because I thought this was a really cool uniform. Obviously, whiteouts are always cool, but them going just straight up black and white on the decals, which they'd never done before. They did a version of this at Louisville, but there was still some gold in the decals. This was just straight up black UCF stack, black and white sword stripe. And I was bummed because when they lose games, there's obviously less cool photos posted. And it's so toxic. I said that to you in the third quarter, didn't I? That I was like,
that was what you were worried about.
I was like, man, we're not gonna get many good photos of this combo.
You said that in the second game.
I might have said it in the second quarter. I was pretty upset about that. And now I can't wait to go see all the photos because obviously we were in the stand, so I haven't gotten the best look at them yet, but I've seen a couple photos and look pretty cool. So very excited about that. We will get to see lots of great photos from this game because of the win, and we'll get to look at the uniforms even more.
Fantastic. Love it. Is there anything else? I think I feel like we kind of breezed through all that, but It's a lot. There was just a lot to get through.
I'm
And
sure there will be a lot more to discuss, and we'll have a whole bye week pod where we can talk more about this game, which I'm sure we will, because this is up. I mean, one thing I'd like to talk about is where this ranks among UCF games now.
yeah,
because it's in that conversation. It's huge, man. I'm in a great mood. I'm so happy it worked out. I'm not just happy it worked out. I think about what tonight would have been and the season would have been if it hadn't worked out and they'd never come back, and I get terrified. So for all of that, I'm in a very good mood.
Very good mood all around, other than the fact that I gotta be up in about 4 hours.
Yeah, Bailey's. I'm about to order some food and have a good night, but Bailey's got to go to bed immediately. So that's unfortunate.
Be great.
But yeah,
it's gonna be great. No, but I'm so much happier that this is happening after a loss. We've talked about it all, like the whole trip. I'm like, if I have to wake up at 4 a.m. on Sunday after UCF lost the night before, it's gonna be just one of the worst days I've ever had. But no, I can stomach it a little bit more after a win like that. So yeah, we'll be back early next week for a bye week podcast. We'll wrap up some more of this stuff from the TCU game. Until then, you can find us on Twitter at Bailey J Adams 22, at by CA Simmons, at Night Sports Now, and at Pegasus Podcast. Thank you guys so much for being with us, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, everybody.